Welcome to Fueling Conversations, the sports nutrition education hour podcast with Dr. James Fleming. In this episode, I'm joined by three former students, Olivia, Rhyse and Sarah, who have gone on to build careers in sports nutrition across elite environments, including Premier League football and national teams. They share honest reflections on their journeys into pro sport, highlighting the realities of the industry and what it takes to succeed beyond academic qualifications. We discuss the role of volunteering and networking in opening doors, why communication and soft skills are essential in multidisciplinary teams, navigating high-pressure environments and role uncertainty in professional sports, managing imposter syndrome early in your career, and the importance of athlete-centered practice. A practical, grounded conversation for students, early career practitioners, and anyone curious about what working in elite sport really looks like. Let's get into it. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Fueling Conversations podcast. Really excited today to be doing like a special edition. This is something that I've been wanting to do for a while, and this is about working in the industry and talking to three ex-St Mary's students who have navigated and are currently navigating the world of sports nutrition. So yeah, thanks Sarah, Rhyse and Olivia for joining me. Yeah, like I said, in the kind of the build up to this, I don't want you to come across like we are. And the intention is not to make the field to be one that's going to be, you know, a scary one for people to join into. But I want you to kind of be as open and honest as you can around your lived experiences, and then we will navigate. We'll go into kind of where we think the field is going in the next few years too. So to kick off with, I'm going to start in reverse order of who I taught first. We'll start with Olivia. Do you mind introducing kind of what your career has been since you finished the MSc, where you've worked and where you currently are, if you don't mind?
Yep, no worries. So when I was doing my MSc, I was quite fortunate that I got the chance to work with some of the Weir Archer para athletes. That was something that helped me to obviously build my confidence and everything within the space. And I was very fortunate post finishing my MSc that I then went on to work one-to-one with one of the athletes, Fabian Andre, who is a T34 wheelchair racer. I've been very fortunate to learn a lot from her in that space. I then also got the opportunity to work within the Boys Academy at Watford Football Club, where I worked part-time for 2 years. Then I had a bit of an overlap between Watford and Aston Villa women's first team. And again, I worked with them for nearly 2.5, nearly 3 years, working in that space. Once I then moved into women's football, it was something that I kind of very quickly grew a passion for. And the female athlete is something that I now probably much specialise in, and is very much my sort of area that I love to work in. I then went from Aston Villa and I went to Brighton Hove Albion, with the women's first team there as well, and worked a season with them. Whilst I was at Brighton, I then also got the opportunity of working with the senior women's national team for the Republic of Ireland, and I'm currently still working with them. So I've stepped away from club football and I'm staying within international, but I've also set up my own consultancy now, very much specialising in female athletes across all sports. Yes, football is amongst that, but I'm now working with a real array of different athletes, right the way through from like sort of your competitive, who are sort of your high rockers, crossfitters, all the way through to elites in swimming, athletics, and some rowing and football as well.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Olivia. We'll pass now on to Rhyse. Do you want to do a little intro and where you are now?
Yeah. So started the MSc, and during that time I also started that season as an intern with Millwall as a sports science role. So kind of first real foray into professional sport. Obviously being able to apply from the masters, and then kind of halfway through that season picked up extra role with like a non-league football club in terms of Welling Town. So again, part-time, just to be able to go and actually keep practicing and kind of honing my skills and building up that experience. Finished off the season with them, and then led towards kind of the end of the MSc, and towards the end of the MSc, went in with Olivia, got me in at Watford, with her with the boys academy. So thanks for that.
Well,
that was again first one into academy football, which was great. And at the same time, also picked up like another voluntary role with Boreham Wood in their first team in the National League. Again, so being able to work with both the academy setting and the first team at another club, so to kind of keep both of those going. And then not long after that, kind of managed to land my first role, went to West Ham with the boys academy and the women's first team in like a joint role. Was there for like 18 months. Towards the tail end of that, also kind of picked up some work with Wycombe Football Club, working with their first team, which again was kind of keen for me to keep that first team kind of attachment, which I found quite a big passion for. Whilst found it really rewarding working with the academy, and it's a really meaningful kind of period in terms of nutrition. I found that I do have a bit of a preference working with the adult athletes and kind of driving that top end of performance. So that was great to get a foot in there. And then as well as that, Gillingham Football Club, again, a bit more sporadic.
Are there any football teams left, Rhyse?
We're working our way through. Yeah, so carried on with that. And then, as I say, 18 months at West Ham, left that role to kind of go solo and do a bit more of my own stuff. Carried on working with Wycombe, Gillingham for the season, as well as more my attention focused around I went to Charlton at the start of last season, and then shortly after Crystal Palace, both in the men's first teams, which I'm still at both of those two, not Wycombe or Gillingham anymore, but those two are going strong at the moment. And yeah, it's been a good solid last 12 months, 18 months to keep pushing on with that. And then kind of similar to Olivia there, which is mostly around the private stuff, has kind of been picking up a lot more now, and that opportunity to, whilst I love football, work with a real variation of athletes individually, that one-to-one side of it, but getting to kind of go down the route of a lot of different sports, which has been quite exciting and good to kind of throw me back into having to do research a bit more and learn some new things, which has always been good.
Yeah, lovely, thank you. And last but not least, Sarah, do you let us know where you're at? Obviously, you graduated most recently, so let us know. Yeah, where are you?
Yeah, so graduated from my MSc, but my time during my MSc was probably quite full on. So I started with the MSc full time, which was a year or 2 years ago now, but at that time I was actually working clinically. So I was working within a hospital within nutrition and dietetics in the adult space. I'm not a dietitian, I was a dietetic assistant. Prior to that, I was also working as a nutritionist, so I do have an undergrad in nutrition, so I was doing that for a few years as well before the MSc. Throughout the MSc, I had the opportunity to go to Harlequins Worthing Academy, where we did a lot on education pieces with adolescent female rugby players. An opportunity then also came up by absolute chance through LinkedIn to work with Warrington Wolves Women's Super League, which I applied to with loads of other people. It was completely voluntary and I was successful in that role. And so I worked with them for a season, also whilst doing the MSc. And then towards the back end, the role of Harlequins Women's Premiership team came up as their performance nutritionist. So again, applied for that and was successful in that role. So just before I finished my MSc, I had Worthing, Warrington, and then was successful with Harlequins. Alongside all of that, I reached out to my local club, which was the Guildford Gazelles. Completely voluntary, grassroots, and it was really great to actually work with a different type of athlete over there, because they were still doing loads of sport, but actually they had no support, so it really helped me sort of hone my skills. Throughout all of that as well, I was also working a little bit with alpine ski racers, one particularly called Molly Butler, who's on the Europa Cup ski tour now. She's doing fantastic, and that sort of speaks a lot to my passion. A little bit like Olivia, like working with female athletes, because I think it is a completely different space. Since then, I've joined Queen's Park Rangers Football Club as their academy nutritionist and women's. So yeah, I'm sort of into my second year now of working in the field, but it it's not like I just finished my MSc and I hadn't had that sort of background. I sort of pulled a lot on clinical experience before then going into the sports world.
Of that, thank you. And I think, yeah, you've been as concise as you can around the many different jobs and pathways you guys have gone. And I think for the listener, they can already see kind of the importance of kind of taking on lots of opportunities and probably not saying no and being proactive, which we know is obviously that's a narrative that's been spun a lot in academia. Can you, any of you, share with us like maybe an unexpected element of your journey? Was there a part of that pathway that came as a major surprise to you, or was it always destined, for yourself, Rhyse? Was it always I'm going football? It doesn't matter where I go. Yourself, for Olivia, how did we maybe fall into that? And if there's anything to share as well, Sarah. So was there anything unexpected in your journey that maybe could add value to those students or practitioners looking to try to navigate this space?
Yeah. No, just on that. I don't know about particularly unexpected. I think it was more. I know I always had a passion around football and working in that environment. I think it was more. I was very open especially during the MSc, as to any and all sports and different range of athletes. Obviously, several opportunities during the masters to work with various organizations, and although kind of going through all of them, the ones I ended up actually supporting throughout the whole year were predominantly footballers. So it kind of just ended up that based on what I was currently doing in that year, it kind of just led me down that path naturally. So by the time I came out of it, I had the experience to get the first role in it, which is kind of just kept me in it in that initial stance. Whereas I think it's one of those where, if it was probably more opportunities like I landed, which were for a different sport or individual based, I probably would have gone more openly towards another route. But again, I wouldn't say massively surprised. I think there's always a passion there for that. But I think that there's such a wide variety of people and populations to work with that I think that there's always opportunities out there.
Cool. Anything for the other guys?
I think for me, one of the things was that I didn't actually know what sport I wanted to target at all. I was really quite open to any kind of sport. I think getting into football, and I would say the reason why probably the common theme between all of us is football probably has the most opportunities, but is probably one of the most competitive to get into. And so therefore, it sounds like that's where all nutritionists end up going, but it's not the be all and end all. And in actual fact, although I love working in football and especially within women's football, I've got a lot of satisfaction working with swimmers that I work with very closely, all the way through from sort of your club swimmers all the way through. And so I think one of the surprising things that I thought that I would be one sport only, and in actual fact, what surprised me is that I'm constantly learning. And although it may be that I actually don't know much about a sport, it gives me the challenge to go away, learn much more about that sport, really submerge myself in it and find out more, because essentially we understand physiology, we understand how to adapt our skills to different situations, but it might be that you just don't understand the actual workings of that sport. I know when I first went into football, it sometimes sounded like a completely different language, some of the terminology that was used. However, now I don't think about it. It's something that comes quite easily. But again, when I got first introduced to the para-athlete wheelchair racers, it was a completely different world. It wasn't a world that I knew anything about. I was concerned about language I was going to use, all those type of things. So I think from my point of view, it was have an open mind. Don't just pinpoint one sport, because I think nutrition now is becoming much more aware in sport, just generally. And so therefore people are now realizing it's a very important part of their training.
Love that. Anything to add on this one, Sarah? There's no pressure for everyone to answer every question, by the way.
I suppose just to add to what Olivia and Rhyse have already said, is sort of from my own perspective was how you have the MSc and you have all the science, and that is wonderful, but in reality it's when you go into those sporting environments, there's so much more to consider. It's not just the science and the research and the data, it's how you behave in that environment, how you respond to athletes, how you communicate. So it kind of feels like, oh yeah, I know how to work in a team. And it's like, but do you really know how to work in a team when you're under pressure and there's a final coming up and an athlete suddenly has nausea or something? So it's sort of those experiences that I felt were something I really had to learn, particularly within different sports, because every athlete is unique. But I suppose that was the thing that I probably hadn't considered as much, was that actually the MSc is probably the starting block, and then you have to add all the lived experience onto it to sort of work in those environments.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's something we do push, right? It's that I think there's an element that some students feel, and tell me if I'm wrong, because you've got the lived experience too, is you feel the pressure to get these work experience opportunities in elite sport. And sometimes you might walk into an environment in elite sport and there is no nutritionist, and you're in there as almost like the isolated nutritionist or getting some support from one of the MDT. But sometimes it's looking on your doorstep, right? So I know, remember, Olivia, you were doing swimming support with one of your children for a long time, and you were enjoying that, and that's a natural evolution. And I think what I would say as someone in the academic side is for students to not have to just hone in and say, I have to work in whatever professional environment it is. It's actually developing those soft skills you've alluded to there, Sarah, and being immersed in whatever the environment might look like, just so you get that kind of real lived experience. I guess we'll move into some more of that later. We'll go into kind of a level of uncertainty post MSc. So all of you have essentially been hustling pretty hard. You can tell that from the get-go. But what would you say? How did you manage kind of that level of uncertainty, or how are you navigating that level of uncertainty that is associated with professional sport? Because again, me looking in, I've seen Rhyse holding the FA Cup on the SCNR email, lovely, good stuff. I've seen Olivia, away at camps. I've seen Sarah doing some cool stuff pitch side, and all of this stuff seems amazing from the outside looking in. But there's always that untold element that you're on a rolling, evolving door where the multidisciplinary team are on a shoestring sometimes in terms of keeping their role. So again, has anyone got any insights they might want to share in terms of how you've navigated that level of uncertainty or pressure?
I personally quite like the roller coaster. It doesn't actually bother me so much, and it is something. It's one of those things that you have to realize, and it's like any role in sport, it's never a given. Like, things change so rapidly. If you suddenly get a whole change of staff, you could be changed as well. And I think it's one of those things that you have to be one step ahead of the game all the time. So you shouldn't really sit back on your laurels in a way and think, oh, well, I've got a full-time role here. That could change tomorrow. And especially, I think, if you're working in a football environment, that can change literally overnight. And so I think it's just to always be aware of that, to make sure that you are keeping networking, making sure that you're making those connections with other people all the time. And I think also being very true to yourself. Like, I could be a generalist performance nutritionist, but I've chosen that females is the area that I love. I absolutely love working with female athletes. I love the challenges that come with it, and there are a lot. And that's not just working with the players, but just the environment around female athletes. But that's something that I enjoy, and so therefore I think it's stay true to yourself and make sure that you keep your vision going along, and keep upskilling yourself along the way as well.
Lovely, thank you. Rhyse, anything?
To be honest, yeah, just a bit of an add-on there to Olivia, to be honest, which is around the environment where we, as she said, it's a high pressure, fast moving environment and can be unpredictable at times. I think a big part on that is kind of what you said there around your values and everything. I think in making sure you're in an environment that you want to work in is key. I think it's easy with professional sport to be like, oh, I have to take the role that's there because it's there, and or it's this club or it's whatever it is. But I think valuing your role, like, are you being able to do what you want to do? Are you enjoying what you're actually doing? Is there good staff and good people around you? are all factors to consider. And I think it is important to remember that, and also just know that that's not like the end of the world if that's not the role for you, and it is finding other opportunities.
Can I just jump in there, because I think it's a really good point and it sounds lovely, but I was just wondering in reality, because I'm just thinking on the lens of a student who's trying to be there, and they get their first opportunity in a professional environment. They get all the stash they want. They get to go pitch side. They get to meet these professional athletes. How easy is it for them to go, oh, this environment doesn't seem right for me? That is, how have you navigated that? You've mentioned lots of clubs, Rhyse. I'm pinpointing you here, but it doesn't have to be exclusively to you. How have you navigated that? Is that just something over time because you're now 3, 4, 5 years down the line? Or what advice would you give to someone that might be like, I can't say no to this environment, is something that's too good to walk away from? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I've had that same thought process in my head, to be fair, a few times, even when I think back earlier in my career, where I think, as you said there, it is a level of one, like confidence, belief in your own abilities, and experience that that if it was to end tomorrow, you have a good network around you, like you've done the work for the last few years, and you can go and kind of make contacts and go to another role. Like you have confidence in that. But I do completely agree with telling a new grad or someone who's kind of going into their first role to do that it's not realistic. I think that to get to that point, you do kind of have to, I don't know if it's the right word for it, but like struggle, I guess, in a sense, where you might have to do a year where, even if the role's not that, is to get through the season or get through that period of time, just to have it under your belt before you can consider that moving. So I think that's the restriction.
I think that's an important thing to say, right? There's got to be an element of like, am I getting something from this? If the answer is no in all counts, then that's probably a clear indication that you need to get out of there. But if there is still, well, this is still serving the purpose to enable me to network, to meet good people, to learn what's good and bad, to establish where my kind of passion lies, or my stance in certain things, how I can navigate a challenging culture or a different culture that I'm experienced to. All of that is kind of probably good in hindsight, right? You might not have seen it at the time, but I'm not going to share some stories, because there's some unbelievable stories we can have over a drink sometime that that we've all kind of been privy to throughout your MSc and some of the work experience opportunities you've had. But I think, yeah, that's having your eyes wide open, and it links in nicely to what Olivia said around, can we network? Can we find good people? Can I just ask a next question around that networking space, because it's quite murky. When we mention networking, how important do you think, like, what do we mean by networking? Do we mean like, I am going to every event possible? I'm going to, when it's a lunch break, stand next to, I don't know, one of the top dogs and be that pest? Or what does it look like for you? How did you network in a authentic manner? Asking for a friend.
Yeah, go on, Sarah.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, having been recently in that space where you're not quite sure in this sort of becoming a practitioner who anyone is, being the one that turns up to the conference and you're like, okay, who is everyone? Who knows who do you speak to? If I was to give sort of one piece of advice, is just be your genuine self. Like, be yourself. Like, who do you want to be a bit of as a practitioner? But ultimately, if you're going there also to specifically speak to somebody, what are your questions? What do you want to ask them? Because it can be a moment where you see someone and you go, oh, I really want to speak to them, but I'm not quite sure what to speak to them about. So I'd probably say, going into a networking event, one, just be yourself, and two, if there's people you specifically are trying to speak to, like, prepare for that a little bit around what you're actually curious about.
It's like my biggest life regret, right? I saw Andy Murray, and I've been fanboying him for like 2 decades, and he walked past and he said hi to the other guy that I was with, and then I was like, hi, and I was like, what'd you say? Definitely good advice, I think. Can I ask a question with regards to those individuals? This is to people that are training to be MSc or to be performance sports nutritionists, and those that are in the field and have been in the field. Any advice to those that, in terms of how to stay motivated in this area? And I'm not talking exclusively for people that want to work in elite football or elite sport. What have you got any advice in terms of how to stay motivated? You've all kind of deviated throughout your careers at the moment, but is there anything you could give for those individuals?
as in what to keep. I think you have to remember this is not an easy role. It's not glamorous as everyone thinks. I think people see that you should end up in elite sport and it's at the top and it's glamorous there and everything else, and it's definitely not glamorous. Working always in elite sport, especially as a nutritionist, it's long hours. But if you are passionate about it and you look for the areas that interest you, that you stay relevant, that you do network appropriately. And when I say things like that, I'm thinking like if you're contacting someone on LinkedIn, it's not a case of, can I come and just do some like work with you? Can I shadow you? You need to think of something that you can bring to that person that they might say, oh, okay, yeah, I'll bring them in for a couple of days, or I want to show them something that's going on within my field. Because what you have to remember is that there are a lot of people out there wanting to get into the space. And so therefore people are being contacted on a regular basis. Most often than not in an elite space, you're not allowed to take people into that area anyway. It's just how it is. But from my point of view, I always give an opportunities, and so I will always try and give an opportunity to someone as an insight, whether it's helping them out take that first step. But I also would say that elite sport is not always the be all and end all. Hone your skills at local clubs, different sports. It's being also comfortable within, like, I think we've touched on it already, multidisciplinary teams, working with lots of different people. We think nutrition is the most important thing ever. When you then go into a multidisciplinary team, it's not. It's very often seen as like the last resort kind of thing. And so it's learning your communication skills. It's learning to really also just work with a variety of people as well. And so, yes, it is hard at the beginning. And there are times where you think, I'm working here for absolutely nothing. But you will get that break in the end. It will come.
Lovely, thank you. Rhyse, anything to add on this one in terms of staying motivated? Because you gave us a long list of maybe 90% of the football teams in the English League. How did you stay motivated when you were trying to get those kind of longer, bigger contracts?
I think, I'd go back to something like that I know you and I spoke about before, James, which is around when going for that job hunt, it can be taxing. It can be quite sorry, I lost my train of thought on that one.
It's stressful.
Yeah, it can be stressful, and I think there's the big part around it is, I know that from a lot of mine it was to do with having to volunteer a lot of my own time to get the experience without that reward, and I think that's what everyone kind of has to go through, and unfortunately it's kind of become the norm in the industry, that you have to do the hard yards voluntarily without pay, without so much as a compensation for travel. There's a lot of give with not so much back, in a sense, apart from you get the experience, which will then help you get to that first job. So I would agree there with that. Kind of ties in with what Olivia's saying, which is go volunteer at your local clubs, whatever the level, whatever the sport, and that I think will help around with the motivation as well. Because again, I know that it's not you in your first job, it's not your pay, but at the same time you are doing what you want to be doing. So therefore, at least you are practicing, you are getting to develop those
and I think
skills.
And I think ultimately, I've spoken to a number of heads of nutrition at big clubs in multiple sports, and they don't exclusively want to look at people who have been working in elite or in these environments. They want to see that someone's proactive, that they're honing their skills and doing everything you've just said. So I think that narrative is maybe one that is not necessarily correct that's sometimes out there. Sarah, anything to share? Because I know you are currently very much in the hustle, but is there anything you'd want to share in that, in terms of how you've managed to stay motivated? Because the other thing is that we don't often address is that life happens too. We're in London, right? So the cost of living, you need to be able to pay rent, and not everyone has the luxury of living at home with their parents or want to live at home with their parents, right? So there have been a lot of good quality nutritionists that have gone through our programs that have not gone into roles because they've not been able to find jobs that have enabled them to essentially live, right?
Yeah, that actually rings a lot of truth. I took on the financial side, I personally took a big financial cut when I did the MSc, but I made that commitment myself. I knew I just wasn't going to be earning enough money, and I planned my year out. And I said, right, what can I live on? What can I actually afford to get by and be okay, and keep the lights on? So I think that is something that does need to be voiced. Is that we're not all out here earning big checks immediately. Like that isn't probably true, like a true representation of what happens, but I appreciate everyone has different experiences. Motivation's a really tough one. To me, it's who's around you, who's sort of in your boardroom. So sometimes, James, I will phone you after like the 10th application being like, I'm second, like what is it? And sometimes it's not you. It's just there is a better candidate that answered those questions better on the day, and they are splitting hairs to pick someone. And sometimes that's the way it is. But in a way, that's also a positive because it shows how many amazing practitioners are currently in our field. And I mean, even on our course, half of our cohort were going up against each other. Now, it's not that we're in competition with one another. Yes, we're going up for the same jobs, but ultimately, if somebody gets that job over you, it doesn't mean that they're better than you. It means that their skill set meets the criteria for what that hiring panel need, because we all have different backgrounds. When I was at Quinn's, I used to, well, I still do, Rhyse. I would call on Rhyse and use him as not use, but like use Rhyse as a sounding board and go, this is what's going on for me. Like does this sound right, or is it something I'm not doing? And I think quite early on it can feel quite isolating, and sort of that motivation can go. So that kind of comes a little bit circle back to that networking piece, like who can you speak to in the field, even if it's just like, if you have 5 minutes, if you know them, to just soundboard and see where you're at.
Yeah, I think it's good advice. And I think probably we don't have to go into it now, but I think everyone's got people, if they're nutrition or otherwise, that they kind of respect in their space or outside of the space that enables them to kick on and move on and not get too bogged down in space. I know, Olivia, you've got many people you've met along the way from Villa onwards that you still, speak to readily to keep you essentially on the right path and staying aligned, right? Can we move into that interview space, because I know that's another area that can be quite challenging. Is there any memorable kind of interview experiences, good or bad, that you'd be happy to share with us? And then in terms of what is it, what have you experienced in kind of the interview process to date, just so that those that are looking into this space, they might have a few tips and tricks up their sleeves?
I think when I particularly went to go for the role at Aston Villa, one of the things that I would say that I'm glad that I did it, was I really, really researched into the club, where the vision was for the team, but also about female athletes. They wanted someone who was passionate about that space. They wanted someone. I hadn't worked with obviously a women's football team before that, but I had got experience from football, so I could show them how I could apply their skills. I showed them that I had got knowledge and that I drew on things like LEA and REDS and stuff that are common topics in female athletes. But I think it was being as prepared as you can, be yourself as much as you can, but also try and think of other skills that you can bring to the role that don't necessarily relate to like being a performance nutritionist. So, for example, which I get probably tagged quite a lot by a lot of the players, is that I went to do my MSc as more of an older student. I've got family and everything else. They see me as a bit of a mum, and so there I play that kind of mum role a little bit more. But but that's because, and I know openly now that when I went for the role, they were looking for someone who was going to be probably a bit more nurturing around the role with the players. And I obviously at the time fit that position. Obviously, I was quite nervous because I was older than a lot of the applicants, and I was thinking they're not really going to want some old woman like her dragging around after them. But in actual fact, there were skills that I picked up in previous like careers that I've had before I started sports nutrition that I could then bring into doing what I do like now. And I would say that sometimes that probably nurturing quality is my strength within like the football environment.
I love that. Thank you. Anything, Sarah or Rhyse, in terms of experiences from interviews that might be interesting or help?
I mean, I'd say, yeah, I mean, it's do your research. It's the apart from the nutrition side of things, which I think ticks itself almost. I think a lot of people will go into that all preparing similar ways. They know they've normally been given a task. You know what you're applying for, so therefore everyone's doing similar research. You're going to kind of speak of the similar things. I think the bigger part, I think, is around they want to see if you're a fit for the environment. I think that was always what most of them will come down to. And I think it's important to be yourself. I think that being personable is huge. It's just being able to, have those conversations and just be able to, again, likable is a loose term because obviously not everyone likes everyone, but I think it's being able to go into a room and have those conversations where they do feel like, oh, do you know what, they would get on with the squad, with the staff, etc. I mean, being in a fair share of interviews from the other side as well, I've seen particularly people potentially come in more, fanboy, and it's what you don't want to see from an environment. So someone coming into that environment, you want to see professionalism, and you also want to see someone who can fit in well where they think that they're going to get the buy-in they need. So I think know your stuff. That's kind of a given. I do just think kind of back yourself, be confident, and be able to have those conversations will show that, again, showing those softer skills, I think is really key.
Nice. And Sarah, go on, Olivia.
Jay, just quickly, just to add to that, I think also one of the biggest things is that also show that you can be resourceful. Majority of the time, nutrition has the least amount of budget. So if you can have any kind of examples or think of ideas that you can be resourceful to that team, they will love that. So whether you have contacts that you can bring into the team, are there ways that you are able to bring more value to your position into the team? I'm trying to think of examples of this, so it's like, but do you know what I mean? They like things like that. And I also think don't be scared to ask questions back, because just as much as they're interviewing you, you have to know as much as you can about that role as well. Because it might be that they come back with answers that you think there's no way this fits me and my life.
I think that's really important, especially in elite sport, right? Because the turnaround of staff isn't like a normal job. There's normally a higher turnaround of staff. So that doesn't necessarily mean the environment's bad. There's many factors why people move on, and particularly in sport, people go with other people and so on. I guess it is important, like you say, go in with your eyes wide open to see what opportunities you are going to have, so you can almost scope out, am I going to have the impact that I want to have here, rather than getting there and being like, oh, now I'm here, like I don't know what to do. Sarah, do you mind giving us a bit more lived, because you've obviously been closer to maybe the interviews more recently than the other guys, and if you've got any, like, what's the hardest question you've been asked, if you can share that, if you can remember that off the top of your mind?
Oh, there's been loads of questions. Hard question, I know. To be honest, I don't want have a specific one that comes to the top of my mind, and the reason for that is every single interview I have gone to has been different. There isn't, from my experience, there isn't a set process. Sometimes you're asked to do a presentation, sometimes you're asked to do an online call or a project or go through data. Sometimes, actually, my first interview, for big job for Harlequins, I walked in expecting a full nutrition, they were asking questions around, like, if you were to do research, what would you do? It then came to the questions, and they started asking me about management and processes. fortunately, I have a background in management and processes, but I hadn't worked in that field for a couple of years. So it was so left field for me in the moment. So I think you can be as prepared as you want, but don't panic if something comes up. It's, as Olivia says, like, ask questions. We don't have to answer questions immediately. We can sort of delve in information, gather on that question that they're asking specifically to try and understand how to answer it. And yeah, I think also just before the interview, if possible, if you can, don't bombard people. But if there's somebody you know already working at that club, it might be worth, sending them a message and saying, hi, like, how's your experience here? And if you can, it's not always possible, but sometimes that may help you also know if the environment is right for you as a practitioner and if it meets your values and how you practice.
I think it's really good advice. Really good advice, and I think it is a challenge, isn't it? It's hard when you're nervous and you kind of. And I guess what you were saying there in terms of asking questions back, we don't often do interview skills, do you? Even you go for your undergrad, postgrad, and you kind of go, now I'm in the world of just applying, kind of Wild West, and the element, like Rhyse said, if you can question with authenticity, then that shows who you are as well, and you can do that in a respectful way, and you can do that in a kind of rude or shocked way, and then you're probably showing more of your personality that way. So it's not an easy skill, is it, at all? And I think it isn't an easy process, but yeah, thanks for sharing that. I'm very conscious of time because I always love these chats and I could speak to you all for hours, but can I just ask you just a few more? So about the future of the field, and I think this would be interesting from you guys. So if you could improve one thing about how nutrition integrates within sport, what would it be? And I say that because I often see, and I'm sure you've all lived the experience of being fractional employees, and often, like Olivia said, nutritionists are the last ones to the party, unfortunately, in many cases. So what do you think that we could integrate within sport better within nutrition to add value to that space? Does that make sense?
I think understanding of what our roles actually are. Yeah. So essentially, within an MDT, we touch pretty much every single area. We touch the tech team. If I'm talking about football here, you touch the tech team. You're the physios, the doctors. You obviously have usually with the operations, with hotels and menus and bookings. You could be with the kit guys. They need to know everything about your equipment, how things are set up. I had many a time where I was being pulled between pre-match and also setting up. And so I was really lucky that I had these two amazing kit guys who would do it for me, but they needed to understand it as well. So you are literally touching every single area. And I don't think sometimes that is appreciated because people think, we want you to do this role. We want you just doing this. But you only have so many hours in the day. And this is why I think it's quite an under-resourced position as well. Essentially, nutrition needs to be sat as a department on its own. And it seems it needs to almost be teams that are built up, where in a structure in a football club, that could be you have your academy nutritionists, plural, you have your female, your women's teams, and you have your first teams, and they all talk together, and it is a department across the whole club. I know there are clubs that are working on this at the moment, and it is something that, and I think maybe we are in the early days of that, and we're on that upwards trajectory at the moment of sports nutrition and how people perceive it. I think we're getting there, but I think there still needs to be a lot of education about what our roles actually entail, because sometimes that's also when you go to interviews, if you're not interviewed by another nutritionist, some of the questions that get thrown at you are like, they don't have an understanding of what our roles are.
Yeah, it's something I've been itching to do for a long time, a little qualitative research project around that, because I think the more we can understand what people think, the more we can then perhaps get in and change. And it's easy for me to say to students, go in and add value, go and show people, how we have an impact on injury, go and show people how we have an impact on psychology, go and show people the value of us having those soft skill conversations. That's not easily done, is it? And I know that it's really difficult. Anything, Sarah, Rhyse, to add on that one? What one thing about nutrition do you think could we improve on around how we integrate nutrition into sport?
To be honest, I am with Olivia on this. Is like sort of, what is our role? Like we know what it is, but it's other departments and teams across multiple sports understanding what we do, but also what we're capable of doing, and the time it takes to do those things and to do those things properly. Because I know that when we invest time and you get a skilled practitioner in a role, you will see changes, you will see the positive outcomes that you want to see, but it takes time and it takes an understanding of what that investment is, and it's not necessarily financial, it's knowledge.
So just to finish up, and I'm gonna like I said, we've been going for nearly an hour now, but I'd like us to go around the group, and this is gonna be like for the first question, it's open questions, and the next questions are just a one-word answer. Okay, and we'll go around the room. We'll start with Sarah first, because I've been picking on Olivia first throughout the chat. So one myth you would love to banish from sports nutrition forever? Tough question. Take your time. What do we think? One myth that you'd love to banish from sports nutrition forever?
One thing that I've come across, I can't say for everyone, is that electrolyte tablets are carbs.
Yes, interesting one. Okay, good. Rhyse, anything?
I think one of the biggest ones I always get is just around creatine. And it's just always the fear factor around it, or that players will say, oh, from they've taken it and they're suddenly feeling like 10 stone heavier. Yeah.
Cool. Olivia, anything?
Nutritionists only give out meal plans.
Oh, or just get the supplements out and make protein shakes. Love that. Okay, this is the one-worder. Favorite pre-match or training snack for a player, not for yourself, when you're pitch side? What's the go-to? We'll start with whoever wants to go first here. Go on, Olivia.
Pancakes.
Ah, do we have a little compote on there, or some honey?
Yeah, usually it's usually Greek yogurt, 0% Greek yogurt, maple syrup, maybe sometimes a little tiny bit of granola, and berries. They go like shaker dishes after shaker day. I stay to hotels every single time. They will be gone, and they never believe me. And I think our record is probably about 200 odd in a sitting.
Wow, Rhyse.
I mean, that could be the staff as well, but
yes, good going. Rhyse, pre-match or training snack, what's the go-to?
I think training snack that I've come across a lot is like overnight oats. They go down on an absolute treat.
Come on, give us some gold on Crystal Palace. What they eat? What does Zaha used to have? Let's drop some names. Anything? Overnight oats. Okay, he can't speak. That's fair. Sarah.
Yeah, I've got to go with the classic original Squares bar.
Yeah, sponsored by.
For me. Oh yeah. Yeah, genuinely. But the original ones, it has to be the original ones. So.
Lovely. One more question, quick fire, and then I'll just a last little finish up. So, one word to describe work in an elite sport, please. Oh.
One word.
Oh, how many do you need?
A few.
Go on, Olivia. I'll give you a few. Ruining my game.
Tiring but rewarding.
Nice. Rhyse? First word that came to mind.
Again, I think it's two-sided. So I think it is, you go hectic, but it's exciting.
I mean, holding the FA Cup final trophy. Come on, that's you're never you're not going to regret. You can never look back and say, these experiences of some, how many percentage of people ever get the opportunity to do what you guys are doing? And Sarah?
Yeah, the first word that came to mind was roller coaster.
Nice, like that. And the last thing I'd just like to finish off with, I really appreciate the honesty. And I as I said, I was a bit wary about asking you to do this, because it is tricky to discuss this and to be so open, because it is. And what I found when I was doing my MSc many years ago was it felt like an industry that was almost like voodoo science. Like you only saw a few big name people, and you never knew what they were doing. So it almost felt unattainable. And by you being open and transparent, I think it is really valuable. So yeah, I really thank you for that. Last one. If you could go back to your student self what would you tell them to maybe do differently, or what would you tell them? It's quite deep, isn't it? We don't normally do deep on the podcast.
Keep going.
Nice, solid, good.
There'll be tough times and times that you'll doubt yourself, but it is worth it in the end.
Nice. Rhyse?
Imposter syndrome is normal, but it's how you develop.
Nice, I like that. And Sarah?
Don't be afraid of like asking the questions or reaching out to people. Like the worst that's ever going to happen is somebody just doesn't respond. So like shoot your shot.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. Now, I really appreciate your time on a Friday afternoon, and for your honesty. So yeah, thanks so much. I look forward to catching up again soon.